Bill Jordan's one of my best friends.
My name is Jerome Perry. My cameraman is Alan Eggers. We're doing a video interview with Russell Knapp. Russell was the founder of the SCI, Security Corporation of Iowa, and he's been an avid tennis player throughout his life. Russell, tell us what year and where you were born at.
Cedar Rapids, Iowa, September 21st, 1908.
Would that have been in the hospital or at home?
That was probably on the dining room table of our dining room at 1732 C Avenue, Northeast Cedar Rapids.
And what was your folks' name?
Floyd Knapp and Mary Boyd Knapp.
Did you have any brothers and sisters?
Stanley, 2 years older. Montel, 1 year older. 1, 2, and 3.
What was your dad's occupation?
He was with Hedges Company in the real estate business when I was born. Very shortly after that he started his own company, the Floyd H. Knapp Real Estate Company.
Where did young Russell go to grade school?
First was Polk School, second Johnson School, then McKinley, and then Coe College, and 2 years with the New York Institute of Finance on how to make money.
Is any of your brothers and sisters still living?
Both brothers died. Montel died at 82, and my brother Stan died at 194.
Because of your seniority, because of your age, Russell, I'm going to ask you about different topics from history way back. The first one is the railroad station, the old Union Station. Any memories of the railroad in Cedar Rapids when you was a child?
Not very clear. President Harding came through Cedar Rapids. I'm sure that I went down to the railroad station to see that train go through Cedar Rapids. But the memorable occasions of the use of the railroad in the history of Cedar Rapids, that not too many very distinct ones.
Okay. Trolleys?
A trolley, I can remember a trolley that went out Blake Boulevard. I can remember going out to getting on and going out to the hitching right on the back end, going out to Beaver Park, having it turn around, and the engineer would come out, but he wouldn't see any little boys who had just gotten off of his back end of his trolley. At least we didn't think he did. And then when he got ready to go, we got back on the trolley and got back to around 21st Street.
Yeah. Do you remember your dad's first automobile?
Yeah, it was an early Ford that the Hedges, go back to right the start of automobiles, but the real estate business, that Hedges was the leader in the community, and I think they were very delighted to be the first owners of cars in Cedar Rapids. And they had 8 or 10 cars, and they would use them in their showing people properties. And my dad had the use of a car, but very early he bought a car.
Did you ever visit the Seedling Mile when it was first installed east of?
Yeah, we all did, and I know that Louise, when they still had the Seedling Mile when I was courting her. But that was one of their favorite rides, was to go out and go on the Seedling Mile between Cedar Rapids and Mount Vernon. And it was a very bad road.
Newspapers. Did you have? Young Russell have a newspaper route?
My brother Stanley, when he graduated from Washington High School, turned over his newspaper route to me, and I earned $6 a month, and I was a newspaper. I had a route.
Motion pictures. Did you get to go to the Saturday matinees?
We all have good, warm memories of the Strand Theater and the Isis Theater on 3rd Avenue, and going to movies for a very low cost.
What was your favorite theater to go to?
Well, the Strand and the Isis, I believe that's the name. But anyway, these were theaters that were handy and close and inexpensive, and we did enjoy the early movies. I don't know how far back they were when they started.
Were they talkies? They probably weren't talkies when you first started.
Sound, and Louise and I went to the first talkie in Cedar Rapids, and Al Jolson. We can still see him on wherever the show was, down when they singing Mammy, and that was the first sound movies recollection I have.
Mm-hmm. Parks, city parks. Did you have any favorite parks you went to?
Beaver Park was closest, and we have very, very many fond memories of Beaver Park. But Ellis Park, we swim in the river and go to Ellis Park. And from a family standpoint, our favorite place really to go was on the west side, up the river toward High Rock. But you went up First Street quite a ways, and high hills on the corner of where the river sort of turned, and we would go up to High Rock from very early days, camping out, sleeping up on High Rock, and good memories of the river.
From
a courting standpoint, taking Louise in a canoe, going for canoe rides. She couldn't swim, but she was willing to risk it.
Was your family the outdoor type? Did they go camping or take you camping, or?
The camping that we really did as a family, or the big thing that we sponsored. My father was on the YMCA board back when they were just big, before 1919, when they were on First Street, on First Avenue. But I learned to swim at that spot. My dad, with help from the Y, taught me to swim. But and then when Louise's father came to Cedar Rapids in 1919, his first task, he came to run the new YMCA at the time, and his first task though was to go out and hunt around for a place for Camp Wapsie Y. He started our camp. And
what was his last name?
John B. Northcott. He was had a heritage of Methodist ministers from back in the years when the minister rode horses and called on their people, yeah. Churches. But he went to the YMCA business and came here from Marshalltown. Brought Louise when she was 10, but the first thing he did was to get land and started Camp Wapsie Y, one of the early camps, probably in the whole United States. Yeah. And we had a wonderfully successful camp. But I was a boy at the first camp, and then at YMCA. It's been very important for my whole life, including going to Camp Wapsie Y and working in the staff in the summer. And Louise came out on a campfire camp, and we had our first little bit of a date, but it culminated with my proposal when I was a senior at Cole to the little sophomore Louise Northcott, and we went out to Camp Wapsie Y and had a picnic just to celebrate.
You and your wife Louise then knew each other from quite an early age.
Members of the St. Paul's Church, John Northcott, a leader, my father, a leader, my mother. The days before women worked, we didn't have very much money. And rather than volunteering to work free, my mother worked for a low-paying job, but she ran the girls' clubs and she was one of the founders of Campfire in Cedar Rapids, and in her Campfire group, two of the girls that she had as Campfire girls became daughter-in-laws, including Louise.
Chautauqua. Do you have any memories of Chautauqua?
My brother Stan, who was 2 years older, but he spent 2 summers on the Redpath Water, Chautauqua, and he would go out in the summers and help raise the tent that they would have put up in a town and have the Chautauqua shows with great speakers, great entertainment, and very, very popular. Redpath Water, Chautauqua.
This is how they presented culture or made culture available to people that otherwise couldn't afford.
William Jennings Bryan, there were great speakers of our country at that time, would be the lead speaker of Chautauqua.
Community theater. Did you get involved as a young person in the community theater or was there such a thing as the community theater?
Oh, I'm sure our theater was founded probably when I was very young, but my brothers were good on the piano. My mother took me to the piano teacher, my sessions lasted 1 week, and she said, "This little boy should be out playing." I was very active in sports. In my life history, which you don't want yet, but when I was 9, I almost died of nephritis, diabetes, kidney trouble. That when you had that in that day, you were deemed to be dead within 1 year because they didn't have the antibiotics, and so my mother and father said, "Let the little boy have lots of fun," because they thought I wouldn't live for over a year, and when I lived a year, then they thought I wouldn't live to be more than 20. So I made letters in 4 different sports in Washington High School, and my whole. But by the time I got to Cove, as a freshman, I learned that, gosh, if you're going to be frosting in the Honor Society, you have to be a scholar. So I had to go and learn how to do schoolwork because I'd been in so many athletics.
The Little Gallery, Russell, would that mean anything to you, what a place they called the Little Gallery?
Louise, my wife, can tell you more about the gallery, but very much aware of it. And then as Louise and I got into our high school, and especially in the college days, that became part of our life. Mm-hmm. It was important.
Circuses.
Circuses. As a little boy, your great entertainment in the summer was being part of the circus parade and going out and watching the circus be set up. That was great stuff.
Did your folks ever take you out to Marion, to the they called it the Interstate Fairgrounds?
My grandmother, Boyd, my mother's mother, lived in Marion, and probably the highest feature of the summer was going to Grandma Boyd's and being there for a week or 10 days and going out to the fair.
Is that what they called it, the Interstate Fair, the Marion Interstate Fair?
We went to Marion for the fair. I don't know what the name of it was.
Okay. The symphony, did your folks, were they active patrons of the Cedar Rapids Symphony? Did they get you interested in symphony when you were young, or is this something you acquired later in life?
The symphony, from a family standpoint, not so much of leadership or involvement. but always of support. Then this symphony, I was on their board of trustees years ago. I think I had by that time, we really got active in the symphony. My Carolyn married Chuck Welso. Chuck Welso was on the board of the trustees of this symphony, and I think that he recommended, or somebody did, that I be on their trustees. But I became a trustee quite early in the history of the symphony, and then our company, my son John Knapp and Louise and I, we have been supportive in both leadership and money for the symphony all of our lives, virtually.
Green's Opera House, does that bring back any memories?
Green's Opera House, I can remember climbing up the fire stair of this fire escape, getting up to the top and getting on the edge of a platform up there and going on up to the top of the roof, getting on top of the roof, and then finding a spot where you could get in free of charge. Yeah, I must have wanted to go very badly because I surely risked my life on that thing.
Did you do this yourself, or did you have some other boy that...
I would say that there were probably 2 or 3 of us, but we would slip into the opera house there and see whatever the show might be.
You want to mention their names?
I wouldn't have any idea.
You had mentioned it, Harry Lauder.
Harry Lauder, that I think that I'll just say that on the first time that he came to Cedar Rapids, that it was far enough back, but still, Louise and I probably went to Harry Lauder the first show he came in Cedar Rapids. We were together.
Was he a musician or a comedian or an actor, or what type of entertainment did he provide?
It's so far back that what Harry Lauder did on the particular interest, I don't know.
Slips your mind.
I know that the average type of thing that we associated with singing and song and dance and that, but I don't have the detail in mind.
Grant Wood, any memories of Grant Wood?
Grant Wood, when I was in McKinley High School, the first year of McKinley, in 1923, Grant Wood was a teacher. I was in the 9th grade, and we couldn't afford to have pictures taken, but Grant Wood made silhouettes of every member of the class, and he made a silhouette of me, and I just wished I had realized he was going to be so famous I would have kept it. It would be a very valuable asset today. But I didn't. But Harry, but he was the he was at Miss Prescott was our principal, and he was an artist and teacher, and she was wise enough to harness him so that he performed the job, but still had quite a bit of freedom. But Grant Wood was. Grant Wood's just been a marvelous of our citizens of our city as far as giving fame to the city of Cedar Rapids.
Marvin Cohn?
Marvin Cohn, I graduated from Coe, and one of my disappointments that I went to buy a picture from Marvin Cohn. You could probably buy one for $300 or $400 at the time, and he was so humble that I can just see today all of these pictures, which later became very famous, and he wouldn't pick anything out for me to buy, or I picked out one one picture I sort of wanted, and he didn't think too much of it, but he was so humble that I ended up with not owning any picture of Marvin Cohn. And here
He talked you out of buying.
He talked me out of buying pictures. Here I was right into the ground floor where it would have been later in the investment business. That picture would have been the best investment I could have made.
As a young boy growing up in the wintertime, did you ice skate, sledding?
You name it. That we lived on C Avenue, and that's right next to B Avenue. But above 18th Street was the steepest hill in the area, and one of my coldest but also warmest memories would be sliding down the B Avenue hill in the winter. And we had a little stream. We had a woods in those early days, not far back of our home, and there was a creek. And I don't know whatever happened to the creek, whether it was underground or what they did with it, but we would go to that creek, and I can remember a nude little boy swimming in the creek and ice skating. It was wonderful to have that creek.
Yeah. Did you, when you went swimming in the summertime, did you have to check for bloodsuckers after you got out of the creek? Or?
I can remember going on a date with several couples where we ended up swimming and in a creek. And I can remember afterwards that I was good food for a lot of bugs. Stray creeks, I don't recommend them for swimming.
How about the 4th of July? Was that a big time for a kid?
Sitting out in front of C Avenue on the 4th of July, everybody did their own fireworks right in front of their house. Very pleasant memories.
Yeah.
Then later on, as we're a little older, we would always have a bonfire and have a lot of popcorn and stuff, and love to have the kids come and celebrate.
How about Christmas? Do you have any fond memories of Christmas as a child? Was Christmas a happy time in the Knapp family?
Christmas was a marvelous time in the family, religiously and just as a point of pleasure. Our family treasured the Christmas very much. We can still remember Leon Myers, one of our friends, had really, really lovely children, but I remember Bob, who one of the leaders what company he's the Manas, one of the top officers of the Manas. I remember that Bob Myers was Jesus, was baby Jesus. So we went all out on Christmas.
Was your dad a fun type person, or was he all business?
My father was a quieter person. Wonderfully fine man. I always felt that I thought if my family were not wealthy and didn't leave money, the reputation for integrity. Floyd Knapp and my mother were they first quartered on a farm 6 miles out from east of Cedar Rapids there or something, but at a Sunday school, at church Sunday school. But coming off of our Iowa farms, the boys and girls, the whole family went to church, and you had people of high integrity. And I always figured that the greatest heritage that I had from my father and mother was how important and integrity was in their life, and it has been in ours.
Was Sunday a special day in the Knapp family? I mean, it was a church day every Sunday that.
I can remember that we were at Sunday school every Sunday, and
weren't you quite active in youth groups?
Well, going back in this history where I was supposed to die when I was 9 and I didn't, but then they told me I wouldn't live to be 21, and so actually you could be a heller and be awful. I decided I'd be well behaved and do all the good I could do, and by the time I was 20, and I made an asset out of the possibility of dying, because I was a leader of YMCA clubs when I was in high school. Then when I went to College, my first 2 years I was assisted Louise's cousin, Lee Winterberg, at First Presbyterian Church, I led 4 Pioneer Boys clubs, coached their basketball teams, and and then going to my first 2 years at College, I was making $40 a month at the First Presbyterian Church, but I was leading four boys clubs, Sunday school class, and coaching. But then I was very active at and those years. But I think I was just gung ho to serve nonprofits and pipe my heart out for them. So I really worked at it. But it gave me a foundation. We have been supporting. We almost probably went into the or nonprofit work, but when I decided on business, we sort of pledged that we were going to support nonprofits all of our life, and we've done it, and we're regarded more highly because of the fact that I resolved there to do good things when I was young and got in the habit.
Segregation. Was you aware of segregation when you were young?
Camp Wapsie Y, the philosophy of the Y at that time, of our leaders, and they were very important in our lives, but they were just dead against segregation. They wanted equality of men be judged on your worth as a person with no regard to color, and bringing the an outstanding leader, colored leader, out to camp to talk at our regular camps on the equality. But you learn that the blood is the same of a colored man as a white man, and all these things that a child doesn't think anything ever know. But I learned very quickly to judge people not by their color, but by the type of person they were.
Jumping ahead a little bit, did you ever have the opportunity to meet a Cecil Reed, who was a black boy at Camp Wapsie?
Yeah. We had a camp for colored boys. Again, that's the janitor at the YMCA was colored. Man we all respected, and the leaders of the YMCA respected him. And so they had a special camp for colored boys, and then the YWCA had a special camp for colored girls. And in my graduating from being a leader at camp to being a pump boy and then to being an assistant to the cook, I was out at camp all summer, for many summers, up to even after I was probably a freshman, sophomore at Cove. So the colored boys, Cecil Reed, the colored boys, these are all my friends. I remember Cecil Reed once that I was coming out in the yard of the camp, and the boys were teasing. There was one boy who was crippled, and the boys were teasing this crippled boy, and he got a butcher knife, and he was going to use that butcher knife. I was close, and so I came in and heroically took the butcher knife away from the boy, but I became their hero because all the lives I've saved by grabbing that butcher knife out of this boy, colored boy's hand. The colored boys that I have good friends, the colored boys.
Did the young people drink and smoke in your day?
One other thing on the colored boys, that at First Pres Church, when I was leading the boys clubs, that some of the best athletes were down on the south side of the Cedar Rapids. Well, at First Pres Church on these basketball teams, I had the Tornado Club of black boys from the south side. They didn't wear good enough clothes to go to Sunday school. They had to go to Sunday school to play in the YMCA League. And so Fred Henson, a friend of mine at the Gazette, and we would have conducted church in the park every Sunday, and then we would have church for these colored boys, and then we'd play pass them a football and had fun with them. But these boys, we were the champions in the city with this colored boys group of athletes.
Did the young people in your day and age, did they drink and smoke like they do nowadays?
I'm sure that the drinking and the smoking would be acceptable standard for with boys and girls at all the ages, and I'm sure that I don't smoke, I don't drink, and as a leader of boys, I felt that I should not smoke or drink, and my wife didn't smoke or drink, but in other words, we always had friends and boys in our clubs and whatnot that would smoke and drink, but that again, the advocate of the YMCA program, I was always a leader and an example to boys not to smoke or drink. Still.
Yeah. So I don't know if we mentioned this, where did you go to high school?
Washington High School.
Old Washington.
Well, Old Washington, and that day that, and it fitted my lifestyle, that the sports was very, very important. Very quickly that football, my junior year, we had a Washington High football camp out at Wapsie. I was a junior in Washington. I was on the staff, and I was also a boy at camp practicing with the football team. But our football team, and I was a sub-quarterback, but our football team, the year before that our team played a national schedule and was defeated by Wade of Ohio, 24-21 for the national championship. My year, when I was a junior in high, that we were undefeated. We claimed the national championship, and we awarded ourselves gold medals of champion. I immediately lost my medal, but we were the national champions. We played Louisville, Kentucky, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, the best team out of Chicago, and the best one out of someplace else. But we were undefeated, the best team they ever had. And that team, we had 4 or 5 players who, our very best players, came from Grant. But after that particular year of getting the national championship, Leo Novak, who was a great coach, but he had recruited 4 or 5 of the best players out of Grant who helped to make our team, the team that was. He had other recruits, and but they changed the school system after that particular date when I was a junior of high. We were national champions, but the school system changed it so you couldn't hold players over beyond their regular age to graduate, and you couldn't swipe the best players from the grad school to play on your team. Rules were made that are firm to this day that the things that we did you couldn't do, but we were the national champions. On football and basketball, in high school, we went to the national championship in Chicago. Alonzo Stagg national championship in basketball, and we beat the one or two teams in the consolation, but we were among the best teams in the country. And in 1921, Washington High under Leo Noack, they had 5 players, and that was probably most of their squad. They won the national championship. They were the best. So, but basketball was one of my sports, and
you mentioned you lettered in 4 sports. They would have been football, basketball.
Yeah, football, quarter, and I was on this national championship team as a junior. My senior year, we had very little. We didn't have anybody back, but we became a good team, and I was quarterback, and I was all-state on several teams. Some won, and some 2 or 3. I was all-state quarterback, and in basketball, we were our team. I was the first team, even though that I would be kept out oftentimes because of the concern. Was still a concern on this sickness, but when the going was rough, I was in, and we had an awfully good basketball team. Track, we were the best in the state. I high jumped, pole vaulted, and broad jumped. And then also, of the captaincies, my senior year, we had 4 captains. I was captain of tennis. Well, it happens that those days we didn't have a court. We would play at Cove when it didn't rain, and but anyway, the basketball really, or tennis, about the only thing we did was play in the state meet at Iowa City. And Deli Leibson, who was a very fine tennis player, gone away to Shattuck and learned how to play. But Deli and I were runners-up for the state championship of tennis. So I was football, basketball, track, and tennis. Letters in all 4 sports my senior year. When I studied, I don't know. And I did. And when I got to Cole.
What year did you graduate from?
Graduated in 1926, and went to Cole. Graduated in 30, but I know that at the end of the freshman year of Cole, by the end of the year, I knew about SACHN, the Senior Men's Honor Society. I found you had to be a scholar. So I went to work, and I actually did become good enough to earn the right to SACHN Senior at Cole. But also I got knocked out of sports because as a freshman in Cole, in football, I got tackled. I had my left foot out. You should always have your feet close to the body. I was sort of annoyed, and I let my left foot go out, and one big one grabbed on one way, and my brother Montel grabbed the other, and they tore my leg apart, and I was through with competitive sports where you couldn't run in a straight direction. Tennis was the only thing I could stay with, and the reason why that you're always going straight toward the ball. You don't realize that, but you're not running around bases or whatnot, but you're running right straight toward the ball, and with a big thing on my leg, I could always play tennis.
So you pursued your love of tennis, throughout your college years.
Tennis, so I made a letter in basketball, and then my knee got too bad, and I went out for football, and the first game they wanted to put me in, they say that Coach Eby, immediately I got on the field, he started to look for a sub, and I did. I hit the hole, my knee went out, and I was out. I was done with football, and I made it a letter in track, but by my junior and senior year, I was out of track, out of basketball. taught football, tennis only. I was captain of tennis. We were the best team in the conference. We were undefeated. And the big excitement of the whole thing, that when we played the University of Iowa and at Iowa City both times, but the first time they beat our co-team. The second time, we had an awfully good player that played with my partner, but we beat the #1 doubles team at Iowa, the University of Iowa. In that doubles team, no, I guess we beat him in 3 sets. But in singles, I beat the #1 player 2 out of 3. But the third set, he was ahead 5-1, and I beat him 7-5. And his coach got as mad as the dickens at him for letting a little co-guy beat him. But anyway, I had a heck of a lot of fun at co. And the tennis, I followed. At 45, the doctor told me I was too old to play. But at 65, I came back and played because I liked to play. And I played national championships every 5 years. Just to have I like competition, but to be competitive. 1970, 75, 80, 85, I was went to the national champions, and I was maybe 43rd once, and moved on down. But when I was 90, I wanted to play the national championship, but I was in the hospital. But 2 years later, when I was 92, I went after national ranking at 90. I went to Fort Lauderdale, Texas, or Fort Lauderdale, California, to play in the national play. There were 6 players. I was number 6th. But in their nationally ranking of 90-year-old players, they ranked 17 players, and I got ranked 12th in the nation. I'd always figured that someday I would be #1 in the nation. I'd be playing at 100, and nobody else would be competing. But I made it up to 90 and was 12th.
Back to Coe College. When you were in Coe, did you have any idea in your mind what you wanted to do with your life?
In Coe College, my conduct as far as the nonprofits, that you feel that I was well prepared to do on the YMCA work. And the first jobs I was offered were at the YMCA. But I majored in commerce and finance and sociology, and I had a minor in Bible. I taught Sunday school class at St. Paul's Church. I thought I'd be a better teacher if I knew more about the Bible. But as far as the engineering for business, commerce, I was best prepared for commerce and business. But I worked for about 5 years in the security business. Started my own company.
What'd you major? You're getting a little ahead of me.
Commerce and finance.
Commerce and finance.
Which fitted well with going into business.
What you're going to do later, yeah. Did you, have you and Louise been going together now when you're going to Coe?
Louise and I sort of eyed each other at Camp Wapsie High when she was a leader and I was on the staff. And at Washington High School, Louise was a sophomore, I was a senior, and Louise was in my mother's campfire class, and one of the girls had sort of liked me a little bit, but she played a trick on Louise, and they had a party where they were like the adults, and she had Louise down for me. And I heard about that, so when Louise came up to sign her graduation book, I put down "to my future" blank. There's Scotch Irish on my mother's side, and I love to tease. Well, she was so embarrassed, she put a piece of paper over that. And I'm sure that piece of paper is still there. But anyway, Louise came to Coe College. I was a senior, she was a sophomore. And at New Year's Eve, the minister's son asked her for a date, and I heard about it. And I got in awfully fast. and asked her for a date on the New Year's Eve, and she accepted me. And so we were together every New Year's Eve since for over 70 years.
When you had your first date, back then you had to pick her up at the door. You probably didn't sit outside. Did you have a car, first of all, when you first dated her?
Well, let's put it this way. All I remember is walking from 2nd Avenue to Mount Vernon Avenue, walking and running, and of course that meant nothing to you in those days. But early, my father did get a car, and I can remember many dates where we had a little car, and Ed Murray, my friend, had a little car that we had at least available one way or another. So we were using cars in college. Most of we had lots of dances, sorority dances, fraternity dances, college dances. We had lots of social functions. Now, I'm sure our transportation, for the most part, was cars. Although I remember that I graduated in 1930, probably May, June. But I remember I had a date for a girl. A girl invited me to go out at a college sorority dance, and I remember my transportation. We took a taxi out to the dance, up the river someplace. But I remember we got back downtown, and I didn't have any transportation. I didn't have any money, so we walked home after our probably spent 30 cents or 40 cents or 50 cents for the food, but I didn't have any money, so we walked home on my graduation night from high school. So I didn't have a car available all the time, but college more so.
But when you did date, when you took Louise out on a date, what was there to do? Summertime, I suppose you took her for a canoe ride or movie or?
Well, let's see. In the college days, we had a lot of social life
centered around college activities.
Fraternities, and college activities would be the major. You had all you had time for.
Yep.
Just involved with the college. Probably we had one date in high school. We went to a girls' athletic association dance, and Louise asked me for a dance, and her best friend asked my best friend, Ed Murray. So our first date, and probably only date in high school, was going to that dance. But then when Louise came to Cole, and I was a senior and she was a sophomore, by New Year's Eve, we were attached enough so that as a senior, I proposed on her when she was a sophomore in March or April of my senior year, and she walked around the block and then accepted. But I'll tell you this though, before I proposed, Louise had made me a cake. It was awfully good cake, and I was eating this cake, and I said, "Louise, will you marry me?"
There's a couple other points of history I want to touch with before we move on. The Douglas Starch Works. Do you remember anything about the Douglas Starch Works explosion? Excuse me.
I was 9 years of age. It was 1919. It was the fall of the year, and we on B Avenue, going above B Avenue, there was pavement probably, but there was just a hill, and I had a cubby on that hill or something, or in that hill. It was probably 6 o'clock at night. I was in front of that cave that I had on the hill above 18th Street, and probably C Avenue in Cedar Rapids, when the Starch Works blew up and everybody in town, there was a big explosion.
1933, when there was multiple bank closings in Cedar Rapids, you'd have been about 25 years old. Do you have any memories of?
I want you to tell you that the younger people who go together and don't get married now because they can't afford it, didn't follow my example. 1933, December, Louise and I had wanted to get married in the fall, but her father got an infection that got in the bloodstream. He died in the fall of 1930. In the fall of 1933. By December, Louise's uncle said that, "Louise, you and Russ should get married. There's no purpose why we're not." And so we did. December 21st of 1933, bottom of the Depression, no money. We got married in Louise's living room, a room about this size, probably 15, 16, with Dr. Gage, the president of the Co-College, marrying us, family, no flowers. Louise didn't have enough money to buy a wedding dress she wanted to buy at Killian's store, so a friend of hers went down and looked at the dress and then made one for her. They bought the cloth. I borrowed $50 from my brother Stan for a honeymoon, and we went to Clinton, Iowa, Davenport, Iowa, and home. And we rented a house, C Avenue, 18th Street, $25 a month rent. We got behind 4 months on the rent, and that was our start. So you're going to have to excuse me just for 1 second.
When you graduated from Cole, Russell, what was your first job that you gainful employment? Iowa Man?
Iowa Manufacturing Company. Guy Frazee, who was vice president of Iowa Manufacturing, and who actually was the originator for the company by that it was his idea that they make road building equipment. But Guy Frazee had a son, Guy Frazee, in one of my boys' clubs at First Pres Church. And Guy Frazee liked the relationship of his son and me. And so I've never applied for a job in my life. Iowa Manufacturing asked me to come in as an intern, work for a year. And so my first job was with the Iowa Manufacturing Company in Cedar Rapids, Howard Hall. Howard Hall was in his younger days. This was 1930, and he actually started the company in probably 25, 6, 7 in there. So it was young, but they were off to an awfully good start. Because all of Iowa knew you didn't have any pavement, and they were a successful company at that time.
What did they
My
pay
first
you?
job was intern Iowa Manufacturing.
What did they pay you?
$18 a week. In other words, I was of no value to them, but they paid me $18 a work to be an intern, and it gave me the privilege of being trained in every department. And I went over to Grant where they got into whatever you do to make big pictures of it. Graphics and all that stuff. I was purely not qualified for that type of thing, but I went through all the departments, accounting, everything, and at the end of well, keep on going.
Well, then you decided that wasn't going to be your...
Yeah, as far as I'm at Howard Hall and my dad, looked me over. Nobody knew any better than they did than me, good points and bad points. But Guy Frazee was killed shortly after I went to work for Iowa Man, so the pressure on Howard Hall of Guy Frazee was off. But anyway, my father and Guy Frazee did me a very good favor, but they decided that I would be better off if I started from scratch in the business world and see where it would go. But I didn't smoke, I didn't drink, and anyway, they evaluated that as far as for the type of person, if I were moved up in sales and in their type of business, or if I talents that I might have that would use to go start cold and see what happened in business, I would be better off to go on my own.
So did you?
So by mutual consent, I started the scramble. I had a friend who I had gotten started in the let's see. Well, I had Scotty McIntyre was. I got into this. How did I get into the stocks and bond business?
Well, didn't you touch in? Didn't you try it in real estate first?
I worked real estate. I worked insurance.
Yeah.
Then John Northcott, in 1930, had left his work with Vice President of Co. to have his own insurance business with Lee Winterberg. Then I went with them in the insurance, and then I had a friend, Ernie Kosek, who I had gotten a job for with Scotty McIntyre in the stock business, and he got off to an awfully good start because the Bohemian insurance companies all had him do their work, so he started his own business, and so I was out of a job, and then Ernie and I talked together and said, "Russ, why don't you work with me?" I said, "I'll do it." So I worked with Ernie for 3 years. And then I could see that Ernie was the type of person that I would never have any ownership. And so we get to 1938. In August of 38, bottom of the Depression, I started my own Knapp and Company stock and bond business. I had a friend of mine who owned 10% of the company, and he went in the war and then left to do other things. But I started the business, and I went out to visit with other brokers. They were all going out of business.
I was going to say, this was at the end of the Depression. What possessed you to want to start an investment company?
Well, I had a job with Ernie Kosek, stock and bond business, so I started with nothing. And Ernie, I was his first employee probably. He didn't have any ability to teach me anything. So I started with no knowledge and worked for 3 years and built some individual clientele. And then I'd say this, that my whole life I've been very competitive, and my whole life I haven't been afraid to take a chance. But I probably never took a greater chance. And most failures in starting their own businesses lose out in the first 5 years. But 1933, but in 5 years, let's see, I started the business in 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43. But in 5 years, I'm still in the bottom of the Depression. Or no, by then I was coming out of the Depression. I started the business in 38 when times were all darn tough. They were tough.
Wasn't it 49, then you become SCI, you renamed it? Security,
49,
1949.
50. Yeah. Then, but from starting the company in '38, I wasn't well qualified to have my own company, but I survived until for 10 years, and then I ran the risk of going out of business, and I took a 2-year course with the New York Institute of Finance on security analysis, and that was a wonderful course. Warren Buffett to use the same foundation and the same intelligent investor for his foundation, but I was not a good investment banker, but I survived for 10 years of a company by probably poorly managing Knapp and Company for 10 years, surviving, then laying off. Well, continuing to work on my own company, but at the same time, I took a 2-year course with the Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham, and by the end of that 2 years, I had the foundation to be a good man in the stock and bond business.
At that time, Russell, did you need a license to sell securities?
I had to have a license to sell securities, and at the start, my brother Montel had started in stock and bonds, doing work with banks, Montel Knapp Investment Company, and so I started first licensed under Montel's license, and got my start really. I called it Knapp and Company, but I was licensed by Montel Knapp and Company, and then along the way I got my own license. In other words, I lost the point of any value of having under Montel's, and so got the license for Knapp and Company, and I don't know how quickly that was, but it was very quickly.
Did you find yourself putting in a lot of hours in trying to form this country?
I was married in December of 1933. I started the business in started my own business in 1938.
1938 when you started.
38. And then as far as that next 5 years of business, I think if you check with the Louise, you'll find that I worked very hard. And also, I worked on Saturdays. I was open until noon Saturday, and I never would get home until 2 or 3 o'clock, probably on Saturdays. Yeah, I worked very hard.
Yeah. Could the average worker, how do I want to say
I
it?
started with less than $5,000 money, including
capital,
including the
license?
Including that I bought a house for $4,000 cash, Vernon Heights house, believe it or not, for $4,000 cash, about $4,000, no down payment, $100 in a year. But then I started the business. Right in the same period of time, but I didn't have any money, and nobody could possibly start a security business with no capital in this day. You had to have $5,000 capital, and I had to write up the value of the house that I bought to get $5,000 of net worth. No, it'd be impossible to start stock and bond business with $5,000. And it'd be impossible to start the business with 3 years of foundation in the business. And I'm sure that surviving the first 10, at the end of 10 years, I could have, well, I was really sort of, the security department had a technicality that really darn near put me out of the business, except I sat in my chair and never left the office. And worked through a period of time that was where it's doubtful whether they wanted me or didn't want me. But anyway, I proceeded immediately, though, to get a 2-year security analysis course from the New York Institute of Finance. And that plus my business gave me a foundation to be a good money manager.
So in 1959, when you changed the name to Security Corporation of Iowa.
That was around 1950.
1950. In that time period there, how many people would have been working for you? In your peak years at SCI, how many employees would there have been?
Let's put it this way: that in the foundation of Security Corporation of Iowa, that my daughters worked in the summers. My son John worked summers probably, and he went to Amherst for college. Then he went to Harvard Business School. But John came out from Harvard Business School in 1969. I would say that we were a small company from 1950 to 1969. And in 69, I was 60 and John was 30. I said, John, you are now president of Security Corporation of Iowa. I was president at 30. You're now president at 30. I will sell all of the stock to you. You can have any time that you need to pay for it. I will charge you 4% interest, and but you own the company 100%. Well, that was 1969. 1974, we had a very, very harsh depression, and John sold part of the ownership back to me, but we would not quit. We were at the point where we could really throw out the plunge and quit. But John and I would not quit. And Jack Evans came in when he graduated from Poe College. He worked for us when he was in high school. I said, John, or Jack, that you get a master's from Iowa and come back and work for us. He did. And so Jack worked for us for 23 years. But Jack Evans and John Knapp, I'll say John Knapp and Jack Evans, they made our company. And my brilliance was that we never went broke under me. And also my brilliance was that in passing the succession of the business, John Knapp at 30 was president, 100% owner of the company. And then in 74, we bought back, and so we had a portion of the company. Then John took over. When John took over in '69, John and Bunny very quickly pulled their ownership back up to over 51% of the business. So they had the control, but under John's leadership, that we became a really good company, a strong company. But my leadership was I didn't go broke, and also the leadership of many parents when they turn a family business into a family business, that they second guess. I never second guessed John, and we never had a meaningful argument in our life. And John did a wonderful job running our company.
Then how long did John able to serve the company? That
John died at the age of 56. What date would that be?
Hard question. I could look it up in just a second.
no, that's all right. And then what age did you retire at? What year did you retire?
I became not licensed January 2nd when I was 93.
93. When you were 93?
In other words,
Okay.
I've retained a license through the entire existence of Knapp, of Knapp and Company, Security Corporation of Iowa. When I retired on January 2nd of this last year, I was with the Wells Fargo Company, was the owner of Security Corporation of Iowa. But I was licensed throughout the entire period of time.
So after you retired, you still maintained
That
your
is-
active interest in tennis, I know that.
Well, and I'll tell you this, that I'll be 94 next month, September 21st. But when you are 74 and have a good heart and good health, and my mother lived to be 106 2/3, where you still have a life expectancy, then you figure, why did she live so long? And I analyzed my mother, that when she came to Methwick in 1965, she was independent. In other words, she rented an apartment and had an obligation for it, and had a relationship of an independent person, not reliant on any gifts from the business or anything, but she was independent and had a contract. But her contract said that she stayed active. My mother stayed active until she died at 106 2/3. She walked every day to her meals. She got up every day, and she never stayed in bed until she died. But she got up and she was in a chair or on a davenport, and she walked. She was blind for 18 years, and she had a wheelchair. But she got in the wheelchair and got the wheelchair right across the hole for her meals, no, for her hair fixing, down the hall and to the right a little bit. She went to every meal as long as she lived. But she had an independent relationship with Methwick. She paid a lower fee because she was independent. We made up the difference in contributions. But we kept her independent all of her life, her being active. And she was active as long as she lived, which is the story for me. I intend with luck, you can die in 3 minutes, but I intend with luck to live longer. But I'm going to, her genius was that she had a photogenic memory of everything that happened in her life. And so Louise's genius was to give her a dictaphone, and she dictated up to the day she died on the stories of her life, Drake, whatnot, courting my husband by mail, life, and then she dictated the story of her life. And my daughter has written a story that someday we'll publish of her life, but she was dictating, laughing when she died, really. And so I'm going to keep I like managing money or making money. I'm no longer licensed, but as far as my own funds, I will manage my account as long as I live, stocks and bonds. Yeah. And then also, I learned that because my mother had something interested her. Other thing is, I'll keep fit as long as I live.
Is there
calisthenics the first thing in the morning, walking up steps, and I played tennis as a trick to keep physically fit. And when I was 92, I got back on the court well enough to get nationally ranked at 90. I'm working to get back in and play some more on the tennis court with Bill Quinby. We played for the last 14 years, almost every Thursday, but right now I'm not playing. But I did play in the spring, and my 27-year-old granddaughter Amy and I were runners-up for a championship of a family tournament.
So Russell, after you graduated from Coe College and you got yourself married to a very nice lady, where did you find your first employment in Cedar Rapids?
The Iowa Manufacturing Company, their chief, Howard Hall, organized the company around 24, 5, 6, 7. But Guy Frazee was the person that had the patents on their major projects, the one-piece outfit and for repairing roads. And Guy Frazee liked me because I'd led his son at First Presbyterian Church and Boys Club. But anyway, they hired me to go through all the different departments. And I was paid $18 a month, which was, I was overpaid because I was being just a learner. I was permitted to be in every department of the company. So it was a real privilege to spend a year with Iowa Manufacturing Company.
And then after that, then what did you do then?
The Guy Frazee died, who was my main booster as far as Iowa Man. But Howard Hall and my father talked with me, but we all figured that actually my talents would be better not in the Iowa Manufacturing, but to see what would happen as a business in the business field.
Your dad was in real estate. Did you?
He was in real estate, coming off of the farm 6 miles east of Marion, meeting his sweetheart in a Methodist church where they went together. But he took business college. He then went into the business company. Was one of the earlier pioneers of real estate in Cedar Rapids. Was an early president of the real estate board, and actually spent his life in the real estate.
Yeah. So did you try to get involved?
In the years there immediately following that, I tried the real estate. I tried the insurance business, and
real estate wasn't your bag.
But I had a friend that I got a job for Scotty McIntyre, and he was successful in the Bohemian, and he got with the Bohemian insurance companies. But so he started his own company, and shortly after, I was working with a insurance manager who was really rough, and I wanted to get out of the business. Well, I talked with my friend Ernie. He said, "Russ, why don't you work with me?" So I worked 3 years with Ernie Kosak, and then I concluded that Ernie would always own the business, and I wanted to be a part owner. So in 1938, I started Knapp and Company, where I worked first under the license of my brother, Montel, who was in this bond business selling securities to banks. But I used his license for a while, and then I got my own license. But August 15th, roughly, of 1938, I started Knapp and Company. I had a partner who owned 10% of the business. He went into the war in '44 and then chose other occupations.
Was that a good time or a bad time? Wouldn't that have been at the end of the Depression? That's why I asked, was that a good time or a bad time?
Well, as far as the historical memories of our country, the 30s were the most depressing, toughest time to operate almost in the history of Cedar Rapids. And when I started my own company, I went out and I found most of the brokers were going out of business rather than starting companies. It was a very difficult time to start, and
Did any of your peers kind of look at you sideways as when you said you wanted to go start an investment company? Or were they encouraging that?
Let's say that my entry into Knapp and Company as a business, I was, let's see, a couple of years later, I was president of the Junior Chamber of Commerce, but we young business people were also busy with their own problems, and we didn't pay much attention to the other one, except just that in 1933, let's see, I would say that in 33,
That was the start of the Depression about in 33.
yeah, in 33, we started the Junior Chamber of Commerce, and I was very active in the Junior Chamber and getting the business started. And I started the business in 38, and it was a little bit discouraging because if you had your own business, you had to be a member of the Senior Chamber. That cost more money than the Junior Chamber. But it was a very difficult time to start a business. But
I imagine you had to put in an awful lot of hours to.
Yes, we worked Saturdays until noon, and I was never home before 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Saturday. You worked very hard, and you didn't have capital. You didn't have a salary. I've never had a salary really in my life, except when the first year when I got out of co. It's always been a commission basis. But
Was it hard to build up a client base when you first started, or did you have a lot of business friends that kind of steered business your way?
Well, Ernie was working in the insurance companies, and so the individual accounts that I built, the reason I started in business probably was because Ernie was busy take care of the insurance companies and had nothing to offer in my development, and so it seemed just better to be in business for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Where was your place of business?
Merchants National Bank, 3rd floor.
Mm-hmm. And then a few years later, you got involved in the lumber business?
Well, in 1944, Hatch and Brookman Company went bankrupt, and I bought the Hatch and Brookman Company, and then I was the chairman of the board and owned 51%. And then I had 2 of my friends out of the JCs, one a past president, Jerry Highland, and another vice president, Chuck Sovereign. But Jerry Highland and Chuck ran the business, and I put my energies and efforts on the stock and bond business. But I found over the 25 years that I owned the Hatch and Brookman that actually that it was a wonderful time to start the business. And we hired a Lee Wells, who was still operating in Cedar Rapids, but Jerry Highland was very smart in buying land by the acre, and Lee Wells was very smart in developing land. We'd buy it by the acre and sell it by the lot, and but the time of development in Cedar Rapids where we would have companies for little areas of Cedar Rapids, I don't know what the name of all these different little companies we had, but we would buy land, start a company, and then sell houses. We were quite a leader in the development of Cedar Rapids in a growing period of time, and it was very profitable. And in my stock and bond business, under my leadership, we survived, but we were not successful until my son John came in.
Yeah. You were talking about being a lot of land being developed. Didn't you tell me earlier that part of this Meckwith complex out here, you owned this land at one time, part of it?
Yes, the Methwick started in 1960. But at that time, we were making a development just south of Methwick, and we bought land, and it was to their advantage if we would sell them some of our land, because it made their property a proper balance of ownership. And we were developing properties just south of the Methwick land, and so we sold them part of our land to help them get started.
And didn't you get involved with a bus company in Muscatine, Iowa?
Yeah, one of the best breaks as far as a moneymaker, we bought the Muscatine Bus Company in 1944, but 45 was about the end of the war, and they had a period of time where really people couldn't use their automobiles, so they had to use the buses. But I've analyzed that our ability to spend money, both for sicknesses in our family and different things, sort of wondered where the cash came from, but actually that we made lots of money out of this development of land and selling property, and we were able to draw on those dollars to get us over the tough times.
Things are really starting to come together for you about this time.
And about that time that you're young and full of zip, and this ownership of the bus company was successful, and then there's Muscatine Bus Company came available. It's a very, very profitable time in the bus business, and so we bought the bus company, and I kept 51% of all these companies. And others would own the difference and probably be responsible for management. But the head we had in the bus company loved the railroading business. Well, the Muscatine, or let's see, the Burlington, Muscatine, and Northwestern Railroad came available, and so we bought it, and our man managed it, and again it was very profitable at that particular period of time.
Yeah.
And then along the way, the Waterloo Cedar Falls Northern Railroad came available. We bought that, but these other companies produced cash that was very fortunately available during that expensive time in family growth, where you have a child who goes to manager for 2 years. In those days, the best treatment for a sick child was to go to manager. Well, if I remember correctly, it was several $1,000s a month for 2 years. But these other additional properties really provided the cash to take care of the crisis in our life.
Yeah. So when did your company, the Knapp investment company, when did it become SCI?
Around 49 to 50, we hit a time where we had survived, but we were not a good company because my foundation wasn't good enough. So,
what do you mean by that?
Well, it was a time where I needed to know more, and so I took a 2-year course by mail with
financial investing type of course,
New York Stock Exchange investment analysis. But it was a wonderful course, and I had a wonderful textbook. Warren Buffett had the same textbook and
Really?
teacher that I had. Benjamin Graham, The Intelligent Investor, greatest investment teaching book ever published, in the opinion of many. But we both took the thing. He became the wealthiest man in all the United States. But the things that we learned out of The Intelligent Investor and Benjamin Graham gave us a foundation where we're out of the study and becoming wiser and money management, how to make money grow, that this turned our company into a company that became successful. And then John Knapp came in '69.
Okay.
And then when John came in, he was geared for the stock business. Amherst for undergraduate, Harvard School, the Harvard Business School, but he fortunately chose to come in and run our company, and John took us from being a little successful little company to really a strong, balanced, good investment company.
Where were you located then? Did you have to relocate when you renamed it and went to SCI?
Well, probably about that period or a little later, the bank decided that the space we had they needed because they wanted it for their own expansion. And so we looked next door, there was a whole building, half of a block available. And so we bought the property and had Security Corporation of Iowa on that property. Well, actually, if you go from a small office and go to a big one, well, you want to use up all the space you can in the big one. So it was just an environment where you had to grow, and we did.
So how many employees do you suppose was working for the company when you first started out in the early days?
Well, let's say this: until we went into the big building of the Second Avenue next to the bank, we probably had a company where if we had 10 or 12 people, that would be probably as much as we had. But when we got into the big place, and then John Knapp took over, and then along the way, Jack Evans worked for our company for 23 years, but Jack worked a little bit in the summers and when he was in high school. When he was in college, he worked a little bit for us. Then he got a master's in business administration and came in as really a top officer of our company. Worked for 23 years, but John Knapp and Jack Evans, under their leadership, we became a very strong company.
How many employees do you suppose you had in the peak years then?
I'm sure that the figure I just saw the other day of over 250, 300 people would be an exaggeration, but we became a very successful company.
Yeah. Did you feel very comfortable when your son John took over that he was well versed in finance? I'm sure.
Well, actually, you analyze the history of our company, and I always say that my biggest contribution to the company is that I never went broke. Another, I would never quit during the tough times, but under our younger people's leadership, we came from a little company to a strong, good company. Mm-hmm. Security Corp of Iowa.
Yeah. Your son John passed away at a very early age, didn't he?
John died at 56. He obtained cancer, fought to beat the hard as he could for 4 or 5 years, but he died. And then
did any family member then take over for John, or?
Well, really, when John died, Barbara, who had been sort of a partner of
John's wife?
Yeah, Barbara Knapp, John's wife, who was a very outstanding lady, but Barbara took over as president of our company and was president for about 6 years before we sold out to Wells Fargo. But John did a wonderful job of managing. Barbara did a wonderful job of managing. We became stronger under her leadership. And then Wells Fargo was one of the, probably 5 largest national brokerage houses in the country. But Barbara's children, both Diana and David, worked for our company for several years. They were fine young people, but they didn't want to carry our company to the next stage, larger. And so Barbara and David and Diana negotiated our sale to Wells Fargo, one of the finest banking and brokerage houses in the country. And our company was very fortunate because you can work for 60 or 70 years building a company and have it up to a peak point, but oftentimes there's no persons to succeed or who are successful in running it, and so it has to be dissolved. But we were very fortunate that Barbara and David and Diana were able to communicate, sell to the Wells Fargo company right at the peak of our goodness.
What year did your son pass away, John pass away?
1994.
And how long did you stay with the company? You didn't stay on a full-time basis much longer after John took over, did you?
As far as my relationship with the company, as long as we were owned, I had a license. And this means that we sold our property a year or two ago, but I would say that I've now, actually, as of the date of this conversation here, tomorrow I will be 94, mm-hmm. but what am I wanting to say here? Well, anyway, but the leadership of Barbara and John made our company successful. Their determination that there were no members of the family to continue the company to the next stage, and their decision to sell out to Wells Fargo was very, very fortunate, because instead of having to liquidate our company, we were able to sell as a very successful company to a wonderful buyer.
What I was talking, when your son John took over, this probably lightened your workload a little bit. And
yes, because the point I would like to bring out, that the reason our company succeeded, in my opinion, is that when I sold to John, I was 60, John was 30. That I said, John, I took over the presidency when I was 30. You are now taking over the presidency at 30. I will sell you all of the stock of the company. If we're successful, you and your family will gain the benefits. And so John bought the company, but the fact that when I turned this ownership over to John at 30, I never second-guessed John. We never had a meaningful argument. But I think that the key to having John come into the company and for he and Barbara and their family to make it successful was the fact that I sold all of the stock to John. In '74, when times were very tough, John sold a minority portion back, but he always kept over 51% of the company. But the ownership of the company by John Knapp family, and their capability, but they paid the price to make it be successful. So that's the key. That's the key to the succession. Mm-hmm. The succession of the company from one owner to the other, but the fact that I made it all available to the John Knapp family and their family. Their family became their company. Their family and
makes
their
you very
skills,
proud.
They made our company the successful company that it was. So I still maintain that my great contribution was that we never went broke under my leadership. But the young people, they made the company successful. Was Jack Evans.
Very good. And then when your family started taking over, you could start work on improving your tennis game.
Well, I've always kept a investment banker's license, and even after we sold the company Wells Fargo. I still kept the ownership up until January 2nd of a year ago. I was probably 92. I was still licensed to sell securities or to give opinions, at least as a registered representative.
You can be very proud of what you did. You were very active in the JCs, and in 1983, weren't you awarded the Senatorship Award, which is the highest award given by?
Within the JCs, that I had the good fortune of being on the first board of directors when we founded the JCs. That was 1933. But after about 8 or 9 years, we who were on that first board, we gradually, one after another, became president. But I was president of the JCs in 1941 or 40.
In the early 40s, I think.
Well, I'll say 1941. I was president, and I had great interest in all the nonprofit organizations in the community because I think when I graduated from Co, I could very easily have gone into the nonprofit organizations and businesses. But Louise and I both determined that we would be supportive of the nonprofit companies in the community as long as we lived, and we've done it. Mm-hmm. But it's been very fortunate as far as making us happier, and we made a greater contribution in the community because we've had that attitude.
You were very strongly involved in St. Paul's Methodist Church, Cole College, St. Luke's, United Nations, United Way, Cedar Rapids Symphony, the Museum of Art, Community Theater, the JCs, the YWCA, among many others.
Well, again, going to the early foundations of most of those companies, that I would be on the board, and I'd make some motions that were very good for the community.
Throughout your life, Russell, I know you had a great love of tennis, and you were featured in a Studs Terkel's book, I think.
Yes, that was rather a surprise, but I was.
The name of the book was Coming of Age, wasn't it?
Coming
of Age.
Coming of Age, I'll take that.
Yeah.
But the Studs, we had a newcomer in Cedar Rapids, Linda Langstrom. Mm-hmm. But she had read Stud Turtle's book, and so when she came into Cedar Rapids, she thought I was sort of special, and she sort of revived me. And I gave a talk at the honoring the 100 companies that operated 100 years in Cedar Rapids. But
this article he had written, he was featuring 69 other Americans between the age of 70 and 99 that were still very active in the tennis world, or in the sports world.
Well, no, it just older people that were active. It just happened that mine. I don't think his attention was called because of tennis. But coming from Chicago and having friends who felt that I would be maybe qualified for that book, but it wasn't so much the tennis that made it possible. Because one other comment,
being so active at your age,
but just as far as the all-around contribution to the community, in his opinion, justified the name being in the book.
Mm-hmm. And in your love of tennis and the many games you played, you had a tennis partner that you still, very recently, still played with, Bill Quinby.
Well, for many years, Frank Nye, the national editor, or the state political editor for the Gazette, Frank Dye and I were really great partners. But the last about 14 years, Bill Quinby. Bill Quinby is one of our super citizens of Cedar Rapids. Well, we've had the privilege of playing tennis every Thursday, 1 o'clock, for 12, 13, 14 years. But I had an operation about 3 years ago that knocked me out for really a couple of years. But Bill, it's been a great pleasure to play with Bill.
Mm-hmm. And I want to ask you about some people in the Cedar Rapids area that you've probably known, and if you had any memories of them. Bill Corton?
Bill Corton, I had lunch with him every Tuesday noon, but Bill Corton is 99. He's sort of my mentor, and he's if you had 3 or 4 or 5 great citizens of Cedar Rapids, he would be up on that top names for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But
And Bill Whipple?
And Bill Whipple. Bill Whipple was, when I was leading boys' clubs in the First Presbyterian Church, Bill was one of my boys. Of course, the age of 18 and 13 looked like a lot of different ages then, but now we're the very best of friends. Bill Whipple, head of the Hall Foundation the last 27 years, he just did, in the 2 or 3 greats of Cedar Rapids, mm-hmm. Bill Whipple's one of them.
Mm-hmm. Bob Yaw?
Bob Yaw and I were little boys when we were 5 years old on 21st Street, just off 4th Avenue, Southeast, and have been friends all of our lives. Bob is the best counsel for young people or organizations I've ever known. All of my children, they go to Bob Yaw for counsel.
Paul Engel?
Paul Engel and I were little babies, 18th Street, 16th Street, just off of 4th Avenue, Southeast. But our mothers walked us up and down the street when we were little babies, and we were born within 2 weeks of each other. But Paul Engel was one of my very dear friends.
Art Collins?
Art Collins, we were the same age, and it's hard to believe, but I graduated from Washington High in 26, which means I started DeCoe College in 26, when Art Collins and I were in the same class. And Art went to DeCoe one year, and then left and started working on the foundation for Collins Radio Company, which 11 years later was employing over 4,000 people, and we were engaged in a war.
A lot of you gentlemen back then were what you could truthfully say were movers and shakers in Cedar Rapids. You made a lot of difference in the community and the quality of life in the community of Cedar Rapids.
This present time, there's a little bit of a lack of confidence in our leadership in the nation, but I just was thinking that 90% of our corporations, 90% of our leaders, they're people who their parents came off of farms, they went to little churches out in the country, but the integrity of most of our leaders is great. And you search through your history as far as companies, and these bad things that people are doing, or as far as if they have stockholders, well, 90% of our leaders are the stockholders are precious, and they're treated equally, and they're not taken advantage of. We certainly have awful examples of right now of companies where people
I
are
want-
dishonest.
I wanted to ask your thoughts on what were your feelings about Enron and NCI when this first happened?
Well, that actually, I would just emphasize that if you really studied our whole country, that you would find that 90% of your companies are honest, integrity, and management with consideration of the stockholder, the laborer, and owner just fairness. But there's 10% of your businesses, 10% of your people, where you do find dishonesty and
Bad
bad
apples.
things. And what makes the news is not the good people, but it's the bad people.
That's a very different and good way to look at it. What was your thoughts on 9/11 of a year ago when the World Trade Centers were bombed? What were going through your mind, or what went through your mind after that when you got a chance to absorb it?
Oh, I expect that as far as 9/11, I can still remember in 1944 or whatever it was that I was president of HACs. That was the same time coming home from Des Moines that I heard that the Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor. But your awful things that happened to our country. That the first thing I thought of was probably was the Japanese bombing the United States and the start of that war. But it was hard for me to conceive that we would be in a world where people would do that, would do such an awful thing as to kill these people.
Innocent.
Innocent, very, very innocent people. Yeah, I just felt that it was probably the worst tragedy that I'd ever heard of.
Russell, could we meet your wife, Louise?
Jerry, that Louise, as a little 10-year-old coming from Marshalltown many years ago, being her father, mother, families were in our Methodist church, and I knew Louise at Camp Wapsie Y, and we just liked each other.
Best of friends.
Yeah, best
all
of friends.
your life.
But the Louise, one of the most fortunate things in my life would be our love of each other, and it's a privilege to introduce you to Louise Northcott Knapp.
Very nice comment. Louise, you had a very good life with your husband, didn't you?
I surely have.
How many children were you blessed with?
We had 4.
4?
Mm-hmm.
What's their names?
Carolyn is the oldest one.
And what does she do today, and where does she live?
She lives in Mount Vernon, and she had 4 children, and she has grandchildren now.
Mm-hmm.
And her husband's a doctor, and Carolyn is she is doing all sorts of interesting things. She does some writing, and she has done some photography where she has taken pictures of interesting sites around Iowa, and they've been displayed on Mercy Hospital and different places around.
And who was your next child?
The next child was John, and John he had 3 children, and they of course lived in Cedar Rapids, and we were very blessed to have him for as long as we did, and we miss him greatly, of course.
56 years, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
he was only 56.
And John was the one that took over the company
Yes.
from your dad.
And
his wife's name and children?
it's Barbara. Mm-hmm. And the children are, the oldest one is
Linda.
Linda. Linda, and she is married and has 3 little children, 1, 2, and 3 years old. So an interesting family, but Linda is an expert. She's a pediatrician, and so she knows how to handle those peculiar situations that sometimes happen all at once.
And the next one?
The next one is Janet, and Janet lives in Charlottesville, Virginia, and she had 3 children. She's lost one daughter to a very hard medical case, and then she has one daughter that is working now in Mexico and Guatemala it's excavations and all that kind of work. I can't think of the name of the trade, but has a very interesting life. And she has a son, John, who is expert in TV and technical things of that nature. He's not married, and so that pretty much constitutes her family.
Mm-hmm. You had a grandson that met a tragic death.
Yes, we had a grandson who became very much interested in foreign situations and difficult problems that people have that can't be helped in part of the place they live. And he took over. They were in Africa, so they had plenty of interesting things around them. And he took over projects once
Reuters News Service.
Well, he did things with different members of neighbors, and when they had difficult time, one child had a heart problem, and he took over raising some money for this child and getting them taken care of. And so he had always had an interest in the other world and people who had things
problems,
that they had problems. Yes, and so he went on a mission to Somalia with some boys, and then had interesting things that they did there. But then they became a newspaper. He became with Reuters newspaper in London, and so he eventually was sent to Somalia, where there was lots and lots of unrest, and an unfortunate incident. The people in Somalia, in Mogadishu, were bombed because they thought that the head of the government that they were after was living in a certain house, and they did a bombing. And of course it was very sad for the things that happened. And he suffered the consequences. They were told that they could go in and talk to the people, and they were in a very bad state of mind. And so when the reporters, there was different countries, and when the reporters got there, they were pursued by a mob, and he was killed right on the spot. And some of them got away, but he didn't. So that was a very sad ending for a young man who had a real future.
Yes, he was. Grandchildren. How many grandchildren did you? Do you have?
Let's see.
You don't have to name them, but you have a nice photo.
We had 12 altogether, and now we have great grandchildren to add to that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Russell, unless you have any other memories to share with me, the Cedar Rapids History Center, the Linn County Historical Society.
Louise and I thank you, because this documentary will be precious to our family. Thank you.
Well, we want to thank you very much again.